Now, let's go under the hood with the Nordstrom's Motor Medics.
Welcome to the Under the Hood Show. We are glad to have you with us. Russ Evans is here to answer your automotive questions.
Thanks for joining us under the hood.
Shannon Nordstrom is here to do the same.
Welcome, hoodies. Thanks for tuning in so we can help you tune up.
I'm Chris Carter here to answer your calls at 866-594-4150. 866-594-4150. We've got some calls lined up coming in on the long distance, so we'll get right to those.
Are we going to get into this again?
Do you have a long distance phone bill now at all? Your 800 numbers, your 866 numbers?
We still have some different charges from our local telecom, but as a rule, they've got us on a set rate per call, and the whole world has changed in that regard.
It really has. Yeah. Oh, I have some information for you guys later that was interesting to me. We'll see if it is to you. But right now, let's go to New Hampshire and talk to Jonathan. Jonathan, you're on the Under the Hood Show. What can we do for you?
Hello. So yesterday, I was driving home from work in my Mustang. Not driving home, driving to work. And the check engine light started flashing at me. And the engine sounded a little off. Now, the previous owner, I had learned from him, had replaced one of the coil packs. So my current thought is that it might need a new set of coil packs. But currently, I don't have a OBD2 port reader. I have one coming on Saturday, but kind of wondering whether it's a good idea to just buy the parts now because that's 99% like the possibility, or if I should wait till I get the reader to diagnose that.
Well, it's an 04, so at 20 years old, it's definitely time for coil packs on there for a tune-up item. Coil packs and spark plugs. We replace so many of those because they're failing, and sometimes they look great on the outside when you pull them out. But sure enough, they're burning through the side. And if you get a code read on it, Saturday's not that far, right? It's almost like today. So, just, you could take them out and take a look at it, but I think you're going to be buying the coil packs anyways for it.
Okay.
It's just it's a tune-up item issue. They're, at the most, 10 years is a long time for any component on an engine that gets hot and cold and subject to all the wear and tear under there. So it's like a tune-up items. If we think about spark plug wires, we'd leave those on a car for real long. No, we change those out, and coil packs will go a lot longer because they're a lot smaller item and they're a lot tougher. But they'll fail. I'd say coils and spark plugs on that thing for sure.
And one thing for other hoodies that are listening, and we've said this many times, but we got new listeners all the time, the flashing check engine light is a indication that most of the time that this engine is running lean, and this engine is running lean, and that it is going to be engine damage could occur if you don't get it taken care of. So do not continue to drive this car with that flashing check engine light. And I think you already know that, but I just want to make sure and say that for other people. And when I was at SEMA this year, one of the things that I thought the good representative, I can't think of his name right now, from NTK that I was talking to at the booth, had showed me that they're starting to sell a kit with all the coils in one kit, and it's like a complete, like you used to buy a spark plug set, and they're selling a coil kit, and that's something that they've got available. They're going to start promoting, and that sounded to me like a really good deal. They were going to make it a value for buying all of them at once, and they are
a better deal when they do it like that because you get a good quality part, plus you get they do offer a substantial discount when you're buying them that way.
So that's something to consider. So he was quick to show me that. I go, hey, what's new? And he told me, hey, we're pretty excited about this. So.
So you think the spark plugs as well? Because I pulled those out and tested them, and they seem to work great.
Well, you've got to look at spark plugs by wear. Look at the condition of them, and if they're fairly clean yet, if they're not completely covered up in soot and carbon and oil, whatever could be on them, look at the gap. Measure that, because they're not supposed to be reset. They go in, they're already pre-gapped, they're ready to go, and as that gap widens, it means that the electrodes are burning on them, and it's time to replace them. So you can measure it and compare it to what it's supposed to be, and if it's much larger, then it means it's worn and should be replaced. Otherwise, you can leave them in there as long as
Okay.
you want.
Would you
Yeah.
though?
One other thing
Yeah.
I was-
Yeah. Okay.
If a spark plug's clean and it hasn't burned, there's no reason to replace it.
Aren't they like 69 cents?
Not anymore.
Oh, okay.
$69. The highest price spark plug I've seen that I paid my cost for so far was $24.
Oh wow.
My cost for the spark plug.
For a single spark plug.
Yeah, for a single spark
Oh,
plug.
okay. Yeah.
And that's your cost. So that was probably a retail of $30-some.
Yeah, like $37, I think it was, something like that. It was what they suggested anyways. It's insane what some of these things are going for, and it's the material in the plug that's making that expensive.
Yeah, they're using iridium and different things.
Ruthenium.
Yeah, ruthenium. Sounds like an aunt or
Biblical.
something. Yeah.
Jonathan, thanks very much for the call. Pray your car starts. Let's go to Missouri and talk to Tony. Tony, you're on the End of the Hood Show. What can we do for you?
Hey guys, how's it going today? How you doing today?
Fantastic, Tony.
Hey, first, I just want to say that I really enjoy your guys' show. I'm actually hooked on your show.
Ooh.
Every day I listen to it, and if I'm driving, I'm a truck driver for a living, so I just go back on a loop on all your guys' shows and just
Cool.
listen to everything, learn about it all, tell you guys everybody about yourself. Show, but it's a good thing you got good thing going what you guys got going on.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.
But so basically my it's not really an issue, it's just a question. My dad passed away 5 years ago, and he had a brand new F-150 that he bought about a year before he passed, and he left it to me. So I treat it as a Sunday driver. And in the wintertime, from down here in Kansas City around December to April, I just store it in my climate controlled garage. What I usually do, and just correct me if I'm wrong, I change the oil in the wintertime. I use full synthetic Mobil 1. I have a battery tender on it. And the questions I have, this past fall, I changed the transfer case fluid. It's got about 21,000 miles on it, and I might only put maybe 2,000 or 3,000 miles on it a year. But next year, I plan on doing the coolant, and then probably on the transmission. I've heard both pros and cons on the transmission flush, so I thought about just dropping the pan, changing the filter, and topping it off. I was just wanting to get your guys' input. The other thing, in the wintertime, I pull it out once a month and start it kind of running up and down the street and just let it run for about an hour to get up to operating temperature. Is that something you guys would recommend, or is there anything I'm doing wrong?
An hour's good.
Well, I'm going to kind of back up here again because I was trying to get Chris's attention about something and I didn't. What kind of vehicle is this?
It's a 2017 F-150 with the 5.0 V8.
All right. And you're putting this thing down in a climate controlled building. When you say that, is it heated and air conditioned, or just heated, or what's climate?
Well, it's not really heated, but my garage is a 3-car garage, and it's got I got a dehumidifier in there, so it maintains around 45-50% humidity.
Okay, so your storage conditions are way better than average.
Most,
yeah, way better than average.
Yeah,
that's good. And so at most it's sitting there for 6 months.
5, 6 months.
To me, that's a whole different
whenever
question than people that are storing something long term or people that are storing something in a non-controlled environment.
Yeah. It doesn't
the
hurt
rules
to
do change.
Get it out and drive it. If you're going to drive it a whole hour, that's great. If you're going to drive it for 10 minutes, don't do that.
Exactly.
Right? Just get it good and hot. Drive.
But Russ,
it,
in all seriousness, no. If in that short a period of time, if he's got that thing fresh, fluids in it, climate
it'll be
control,
fine.
there's no reason to go out and even do that hour, is there?
No, he doesn't have to, as long as it's got a battery tender on it, maintainer on the battery, so you can start it up in the spring. But hey, if it's a nice day in Kansas City in February, could be 72 degrees. It might be a nice day. You want to get out and drive that thing.
But if he's driving it just because he thinks he has to,
no,
you
drive
don't need to.
Yeah, don't drive it because you think you have to.
But if you do take it out, Russ makes a point that we hear we need to correct this for people. Don't just go out there and start it, let it run for 10 minutes and shut it off in the garage because you think it's good for it. That's not.
Right.
You know, Chris asks us the same question every year about putting his car away.
But I want to come back to that because that was an interesting.
But I mean, we basically tell him the same thing we'd tell you is that if your fluid is fresh and you know you got the fluid changed recently, so the chemical pack is good in it, you're using the recommended fluids, the fluids are at the levels they're supposed to be. A 2017 F-150, you typically aren't going to have fluid problems if everything's working correctly. Take it out, enjoy it, drive it, make sure it's good and warm, pull it where you're going to park it, and shut it off.
Keep listening to the Under the Hood show.
Yep.
Thanks, Tony. Good luck. 866-594-4150. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you on the Under the Hood show.
Be sure to visit our website for news, contests, and previous shows at underthehoodshow.com. Welcome back, everybody. It's time to get back under the hood with the Motor Medics.
866-594-4150. Now let's go to Colorado and talk to Dave. You're on the Under the Hood show. Dave, what can we do for you?
Hi, you guys. I'm working on a 5.2 Chevy Suburban in '05, and my instrument cluster's shorting out. And if I pull it out and move it around, I can get it working and put it back in and mount it, then it goes short again. Is that more likely going to be in the plug, or is it? I checked all the wires. I can't find any place where it's eaten through by a rat or something. I'm wondering if it's the plug, or what do you think? The module, since it works off and on, would it indicate one way or the other to you as far as what's bad?
It's almost always the instrument cluster itself, the whole thing. And many times, I don't think I've ever seen it be anything but the instrument cluster. And we put in over 100 of these things at our shop in these trucks. They just have an inherent failure in it. And there's some people who will say, just take it apart and solder this and solder that and put it back in, it'll be fine, or change all the motors out. And it's like, it's just as easy to buy a complete Dorman, pre-programmed, ready to go cluster, drop them in. I think they're around a couple $100, maybe just slightly more, but it's just so much less hassle just to buy it, put it in, walk away. You're done. Yeah. You don't have those problems anymore. They're fixed.
How many miles are on this truck, this Suburban?
How many miles? Right about 200,000.
Okay. Well, I'm just going to throw this out as another idea too, depending on your market that you live in. But Chris is wondering what I'm going to say. Sometimes I don't even know what I'm going to say.
I know what he's going to say.
But if it's got a bunch of miles on it and you're not concerned about the actual mileage piece of it,
why would you be with an 05 with 200,000?
Well, maybe it's the cleanest 05 200,000 miles Suburban ever, but it probably is okay that it's got 200,000 miles. And if somebody's going to buy it from you at 250,000 miles, it's not a lot of difference in value. You might find a self-service yard that you could go out and pull a cluster out of another vehicle and buy it for not a lot of money and try it. The mileage will be different. And you'll have to put a sticker on there that says not actual miles and answer your title is not actual miles, but it doesn't matter at that age. You may get lucky and get one that works just great and you can spend way less money.
Right.
And if it doesn't work and there's a couple of them out there, you can return it and grab another one. But there's a year range there where they fit quite a bit of stuff, and they are very popular to have problems. And I just throw that out as an idea. So, but the majority of people that have I would say a vehicle that is in really good condition or low mileage, they want to go down the road of the remanufactured cluster because that also comes with a bonded certificate to be able to set the miles at what your miles are when you send it in, so you can keep it accurate and moving forward. Right. Without having to declare not actual miles.
Right. Okay.
Does that make sense? Does that make sense?
Well, yes, it certainly does, and I appreciate your time.
Hey, I have one more question. We've got a bunch of calls, but I got to ask this question. Why did you choose a rat as your rodent of choice when you told your story?
Well, I live up in the woods, I'm really heavy-duty woods up here, and there's lots of rats, so
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
Some
they
people
look nice in the engine compartment. Huh?
Okay, some people choose mouse, some
Yeah.
people choose squirrel, but he chose rat,
He
and
went right to
I want to know why rat. I mean, that just sounds huge. Under the
Wolverine.
sounds huge under the dash.
Dave, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. 866-594-4150. What I was thinking about was it wasn't too many years ago when this fellow over here said, you can do it. You just pull, it's got little over 40 solder points. It's a piece of cake. And I said, what are you talking about? And he was like, that's nothing. Now he's all about just going and getting a different one.
YouTube videos, you can do it.
Yeah.
If you want to try, you can do it.
866-594-4150. Let's talk to Brian. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Brian, what can we do for you?
Morning, everyone. Hey, guys, I bought a 2020 Chevy Silverado LTZ in March of this year. There's 71,000 miles on it. And this has happened to me twice. I was coming home from Duluth last month. Came back, probably south of Marshall on Highway 23. The adaptive cruise terminates and isn't available. And I kept going down Highway 23, got close to I-90, and I started playing with it again. It did engage and hold. I did not at that time shut down the adaptive cruise and tried just the regular cruise. Last week I went to Huron and just ran the normal cruise. And going up 29, I was at 80, but as soon as I put it on, it would run at 80 and it'd run down to 77, 76 and back up to 80 and up and down again. So I just shut it off. And I turned the adaptive cruise on and then it would work normally. A couple times in my work parking lot and at home in the garage, when I put it in drive or when I back up, it seems like it's stuck, like a brake is on. So I'm assuming that the cruise control module and what's ever running the adaptive cruise and all the sensors is probably the problem. That seem reasonable?
Maybe. The first time this thing
I
quit
don't know.
and started acting up, was it raining outside or snowy or anything like that?
Dirty. Did you?
A lot of bugs in the air?
No, I wasn't. The only thing I've read so far looking online is it was a bright sunny day and I was headed southwest. So the sun could have been hitting. Is there some type of a sensor in the windshield?
There is.
For that or not?
And if that sensor if the sun hits it just right or reflects off another car, it just depending on which direction you're going, that'll affect it. If it's dirty, if there's bugs on it, if it's raining, a bug can land, get splattered on there, and then the sun can reflect off of that and cause a problem. They get shiny sometimes, especially those pretty little green ones. They just, maybe a lightning bug. I don't know. Mine has that problem. I've had it where I'm driving on vacation and it doesn't work right, and I just get out there and wipe it off, and then it's fine. Especially in ice.
Yeah,
I get a coating of ice and it won't work.
It was overnight in Duluth, so there was frost.
Yeah.
Well, one thing
three, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So to say it was dirty was possibly is an accurate statement, but it wasn't raining at that time. It was a clear day. Again, I was headed southwest and the sun was hitting it. So.
To just kind of give the realism check, though, the engineers that made that stuff, they made it knowing it was going to go into some harsher environments. They knew that truck country is the middle of the country.
Doesn't mean they always work though, right?
You're going to get that butterfly that splats right in the right place that can cause problems. But some of this, is that system, Russ? I always thought, and I'm not trying to play correct here or anything, but I thought the windshield one had to do with the lane side to side, and the radar cruise I always thought was a sensor up in the front behind the grill or the bumper.
Well, you've got one.
I know, and I think my sensor is behind the grill or the bumper when you have that
if
adaptive
you've got
cruise.
Right below the grill emblem, if it's got the little round sensor, that's where it is. If it does not have that, it's in the windshield. I do not have that on mine. Mine's in the windshield.
Yours is in the windshield. It's like my dad got a new truck, and he was trying to get the adaptive cruise to work, and of course reading the owner's manual, and I'm like, I don't think it has it because they've got different buttons on the steering wheel. And he goes, well, yeah, it's supposed to have it. I go, I don't think it does. And that was what we found out, is his truck just simply didn't have adaptive cruise. I mean, they can pile these options in and out so easy now with the way the CAN bus network's set up. They can put an option in a truck, and like during the supply chain shortages, they're like, okay, we're pulling that option because we don't have the piece for it. And they just would pull it out. But if you think that everything seemed reasonable and normal, I would take a trip to the dealer and let them reprogram the system and just make sure that everything is up to date on the software.
And it could be that.
And check that, because it is unusual for those systems to not work, but it does happen.
Brian, thanks very much for the call. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you on the Under the Hood Show.
Prepare to learn something. You're going under the hood.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here. If you subscribe to the YouTube channel and join the Hoodie Fan Club at underthehoodshow.com, you could win a hoodie.
Like Cooper Billingsworth, congratulations from our friends over at Universal Technical Institute, where you can go to get your automotive education. You could be just like, well, I don't want to say just like us, but you could be just like
me.
Other good
You're the only one that could say
automotive
it,
technicians.
Right.
Just be safe. It's okay to be humble. You're the only one that could say it. You could be just like me.
Any way you look at it, you can get a great career at Universal Technical Institute, uti.edu.
866-594-4150. Let's talk to Carter. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Carter, what can we do for you?
Hey guys, it's Carter. How's it going?
Good.
Wonderful.
I am dealing with some lighting issues on my 2005 Chevy Silverado. These are the daytime running lights, and I had a couple issues with the pigtails or the connectors. They burned out, so I replaced them once and swapped to LED daytime running lights. I can't recall the light bulb number, but I ran those for about 4 or 5 months. The lights quit working, so I pulled the lights out. I got them warranted at the parts store, put them back in, and now I don't have any power to my daytime running lights at all. I pulled the relay under the in the fuse box under the hood. I found some slight burning on like the side of the relay on the case. I tested the relay, put the relay back in the fuse box, still having no lights for the daytime running lights. I was just curious if you guys could point me in the right direction.
Down. I think you need to take the fuse box out and look on the underside of it and see if your wire on the backside is burnt, mostly off, if not completely off of that daytime running rate relay, because it's pretty heavy duty. But if you load those things enough, like with a shorted LED driver or something like that, it'll burn that off. I switched to those LEDs 5-6 years ago.
Are you still on the same ones?
Yeah. Because I was putting bulbs in every 6-7 months.
And every truck you meet on the interstate has got one or the other out.
Right.
And it seems like they can't burn both out. Why can't
No,
they
it's
just
usually
both
one
burn
or
out?
the other.
Yeah. And they stay that way forever, it seems like. But
does a pediddle count? Pediddle count for a running light?
I don't think so.
They say
Rules not been written yet.
replace the harness, the last 12 inches of it, and the bulb, and that'll fix your problem. That's GM's fix. And it doesn't work. It may last about a year with that instead of every 6 months. So I said, I give up. And I put the new connectors on because they were melted, and I hooked them to some cheap LED. I bought the whole LED housing, and I think they were $39 for the pair of them. I got an LED turn signal and an LED marker light. The running light was way brighter than the factory bulb that was in it, and it has not failed since. And it's got a little different look to it. And it's, it's not annoying. It's just a nice looking light.
Yeah, your truck looks great. The lights on yours.
Oh, not that one.
This
Those
is
are
on
homemade.
that's on the Tahoe.
Those are
okay.
homemade. This is on the Tahoe.
Oh, okay.
No, those on my truck weren't $39.
Yeah. No, they're a little more money than that. The Tahoe, though, is the same generation as the pickup he's describing, and that's very relevant.
Mine required a hot knife and an oven and about $600 worth of parts.
Not something that everybody would do or anybody would do.
But I
Mine
agree.
are always
I had
going
fun
out
building
for
it.
one or the other.
Yeah, just get the LED for it, but you're going to have to get in there and find out what's going on the bottom of that fuse box, and it may just be as simple as the bolt-on connector has come loose on the bottom of it. A lot of them weren't tight from the factory.
Okay, and those fuse boxes, those are pretty easy to pull out and get to the underside of them.
I bet you could get that thing out of there in 3 minutes.
Okay. All righty. Thank you much, guys. I appreciate it. That helps.
Thanks,
bet.
Carter. Thanks for listening.
Can we play a game called Name That Repair instead of Name That Tune? I could pull that out in 2 minutes.
See, we could race.
I could do that in 1 minute.
866-594
Pull that part.
4150. Let's go to Florida and talk to Nigel. You're on the other Under the Hood show. Nigel, what can we do for you?
Hey, how you guys doing?
Fantastic.
I got a 2017 Cadillac ATS. I recently purchased it maybe like 2 weeks ago. It's used. It's got 40,000 miles on this one owner. I was really calling to get some tips on what I should do at 40,000 miles to keep it long lasting. Like, is there any maintenance maybe I should do?
Which motor is in that one? Is that the little turbo, or what motor you got in that one?
Oh, it's got a 3.6.
Okay. All right.
3.6. It's a Florida car. Probably been a Florida car its whole life. So it hasn't
Yeah,
had
it's one owner. It was purchased out of Boca.
Okay. So it doesn't have the extreme cold that we deal with, which causes a lot of oil system problems. The friends I have that are down south compared to the people that are up here and us in our shop, when I tell them, oh, we got another 3.6 in with timing chains, they say, what? And I'm like, well, yeah, the timing chains went out of this 3.6. It was another one. It's like, well, how many of them do you do? I'm like, well, how many can you count? Like all of them? They're all
It's
going
like, how many
bad.
do we want to schedule?
Yeah, they're either bad or they're going bad. But down there, they're like, I've never put timing chains in a 3.6. What are you talking about? And a lot of it has to do with the oils that they make today and the temperatures. When you combine them in climates that get below freezing, sludge builds up, wear happens, and things wear out. They just have a harder time in the colder climate. So you're more apt to have a 3.6 that has a much longer life without that kind of maintenance down there. The only problem we've ever seen with the 3.6 is the failure in the timing chains, which can cause bigger problems. But that's the only failure we've seen in one so far. I mean, they're a really tough engine. And even when you do replace timing chains, we've seen some of them. I've got a couple of them with over 200,000 that have had chains put in them once or twice. But with yours, if you keep that oil changed on a pretty regular schedule, and I like to see our customers do it 3 months, 3,000 miles because of our climate. If you're on the highway more, in the bigger cities where you have to get out and drive on the highway and it's completely warmed up every time you drive it, you might be able to go 4,000 miles on it. But keep an eye on that and keep your filters changed, of course. The transmission in that car, you should not have to change the fluid in yet. I'd be looking about that 80,000 mile range before I had it completely flushed, but I would do it there at 80. And because of the year, about 3 more years from now, if you're getting up around that 80, 90,000 miles and it's 10 years old, when you hit that 10 years, unless you hit 100,000 before the 10 years, I would probably flush the coolant in it and then just go. I think that car will last you a pretty long time.
That's good to hear. I think one of my biggest concerns at the moment, because I'm still getting used to the car, I noticed that the miles per gallon on the dashboard, it's only showing like average 13, and of course the car is advertised at like 19 and 20. When it was new, and then like when I fill the tank up, I was always under the assumption that cars, pretty much no matter the size, they pretty much make the tank based on the size to go 350, maybe 400 miles to a full tank. But this one is like a full tank is getting like 240.
That sounds like a fuel economy concern to me.
It does.
Right? Yeah,
because he's
it
right.
does.
They make the cars, typically they want to get over 300 miles on a range in a tank.
And Russ mentioned this in his dissertation there on what to do. What is the typical use for what's your drive typically?
So this car was purchased as kind of like a toy. It's not my primary car. I got a Toyota that I drive daily. This car is something that I kind of like just go sporting in, I guess you could say. So it is local driven, not a lot of highway use. If it is, I mean, I'm in a big city, so if I do get on the highway, it's just to go to like 2 exits up. You know what I mean? Something's quick.
If you're doing short trips and just kind of playing around, having some fun, date car, that kind of thing, you're going to definitely see a much lower miles per gallon, but that still seems
That
like a
still
lot less
seems- yeah.
than advertised.
It's way less unless he's got it
Yeah.
to the floor.
Yeah, I was
everywhere
wondering
he
if I should change like the spark plugs or something.
I think Russ is
Or
about
if
to
I'd
say
be
it.
wasting
goes.
money.
If it was my car, I'm going to plug a scanner into it and look and see what it shows for fuel trims. Because if it shows it's adding a whole bunch of fuel or taking away a whole bunch of fuel, then I need to go looking other directions, like maybe for a vacuum leak or something, or even a mass airflow sensor that's really dirty. Because that car, if it's one owner and somebody didn't drive it a whole lot, it's possible that mass airflow sensor is dirty and it's not letting the car read the fuel. That is the primary source of the fuel trim on that car. And if it's just dirty, it will throw your miles per gallon way off. I've seen cars go from,
And if it's doing that, it can cause other problems
oh
by
yeah,
dumping more fuel in.
for sure.
Besides just dumping more fuel in.
So if he's handy, he could clean that himself.
Of course.
As just a preemptive strike.
Berryman B12 Chem Tool. It's a great product our partner makes. And if you take that sensor out and you spray it, and you can just let it air dry or just blow on it. Don't use compressed air. Just,
Yep.
Chris says, what do you do, Chris? Yeah, just like that.
It's a Nintendo cartridge.
It's
Yeah, just be gentle with it.
Not that hard.
Nintendo.
Yeah.
Some of these people don't know what Nintendo,
They're not.
that's old guys like us know. but
right.
Do they?
Atari 2600?
Oh, wait. What's a Nintendo that I saw on TV? The Switch?
Well,
They
that's
still
even
use that?
kind of old.
Yeah.
But do they still have that
Oh, yeah.
cartridge?
Still, yeah.
They-
Oh, I don't know if they have cartridges.
They have little plug-in cartridges.
I
Yeah,
thought everything
okay.
was downloaded.
yeah,
No.
no, there's actual little. Yeah. Or,
Okay.
All right.
no,
So-
excuse me. The Switch. Oh gosh, the Switch actually went to no cartridges.
So that's
Well,
what I
my kids have got them. Yeah.
That's what I'm
What
thinking.
was the one before that?
Was it the crystal set? Did you make your own crystal set to pull in KDKA in
2600
Pittsburgh?
Atari? All right. So
You do need to have somebody if you don't have it yourself, spend $1 or $2 and have somebody do a scan on it for the fuel trims. And no check engine lights, right?
Okay. No check engine lights. The car is beautiful. It's super clean. Underneath the car is super clean. The engine bay. This car is definitely one owner. I don't know who owned it. I found a card under the seat. It's like cardiovascular or something. So they might have been an older person. But it's
Or
really
a
clean
doctor.
car.
Could be a young doctor and dropped his own card.
or likes
yeah,
me, just likes a lot of cheeseburgers. And
just getting out there.
Just so many stories we could get.
But
Get with
Nigel,
that.
your instinct there is right that you need to get that checked out.
Like I said, I don't know what his driving, if it's sporting up and down and hitting the low range, hitting the manual shift and playing
Yeah.
around a little bit on a couple streets as you're driving around, you could easily bring that thing down to a low mileage per gallon.
But it would even out eventually.
I'm kind of
right?
curious about these drives he's
Yeah.
talking about.
When he said 2 exits, I thought, he's
no, I think
jumping on it.
Yeah, he's having some fun.
Nigel, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. 866-594-4150. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we want to hear from you on the Under the Hood Show. 866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. Let's talk to Jonathan. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Jonathan, what can we do for you?
Hey, I have a 2000 Buick LeSabre Limited, and just recently the backlighting for the digital display on the instrument cluster went dark on me, so I can't see what the shifter's in, the odometer, all of the mileage stuff that you can pull up on the driver information center. None of that is readable. Is that going to be a fuse, or am I looking at replacing the cluster for that problem?
Is all of your other lighting, I say all, but is your radio, temp control, does that stuff still seem pretty normal?
Yes, the lighting for the gauges and so on, the radio, everything like that is still working. All of the analog looking gauges, I believe they're still digital driven, but the analog looking gauges, the speedometer, the fuel gauge, everything is working correctly.
All right. Well, we just wanted to make sure it wasn't like an ambient light sensor issue if this car had the different lighting packages, because sometimes that can get screwed up and shut down lighting during the day that normally you would have or at night. But it sounds to me that's not a cluster that they used to have if you ever took one apart in an old vehicle where you had bulbs you replaced in the back. That's an integrated assembly with printed circuit boards that have diodes and LEDs and everything that create that allure, the background effect. And if it's not working, it's typically a problem with that cluster. It's not a separate fuse for that or anything, or you'd have more systems down, I believe. And so
is this the GM cluster,
well,
or is this different?
This isn't a well-known one to have problems, but
Okay.
we bring up the GM cluster. We're kind of hard on them because they've got a run of them in very popular trucks.
Mm-hmm.
They've got a run of them in very popular cars, Impalas and Monte Carlos and stuff that were bad. And every manufacturer's got some that go bad. So,
Right.
But we just talk about the other ones quite a bit because there's so many of them.
I just read an article that said less than 1% of this vehicle has this issue, but that is more than some vehicles have in their entire run. So it was kind of it was an article about that, how that can be misleading. But
Russ, was there ever a big run on LeSabre clusters being bad?
No. We had a couple of them because the odometer wouldn't light up and the shift indicator, but just like a couple of them ever compared to a couple hundred of the Chevy trucks.
Right.
Yeah. So in this particular instance, is this I'll ask the same question I asked earlier in the show. Is this a super low mileage vehicle or is it something that is a work car or what's the condition of the car?
It hit a deer last year and still has a wrinkled fender and hood. I replaced the headlight that it took out, but other than that, last oil change was at 220 or 225,000. I forget what it was.
All right, you've walked me right into my answer then. If the car's got 200,000 miles on it, it's not something you're trying to maintain and preserve as a low mileage. This is what I'm going to use as a sales pitch when I get rid of it. You are probably best served just to pick up a used instrument cluster with a warranty. And, maybe you can find something close to your same miles, but pick one up and you can do that either through one of our partners like Car Dash Part and find one that has one maybe already on the shelf that they dismantled, or they have a vehicle that has one in it, or in some areas you can go to a self-service yard. And like at our particular place, we have a kiosk where you can look up fitment to figure out what fits what. And you could probably get a cluster for less than $30 that you can stick in there yourself if you're handy and try it and see if the problem goes away. And that's a pretty cheap remedy at that point for that age and era of a car. Now, once again, if you have a vehicle that you're concerned about mileage on, once you change that cluster, unless you send it in through a reman program, you then have to declare that vehicle as not actual miles because you've switched the miles. But it just doesn't affect the value when they're that old. That's what I want to get across to people. Is this going to
be one that you can read the mileage with an OBD2 sensor? Okay.
You might be able to get a flashlight and shine in there and look, and sometimes you can see the remainder of those LCDs, and also on those dimmer switches that try your dimmer switch.
Yeah, there you go. That's good.
Like move it around a little bit and see if you can play with it and see if it'll. Because sometimes it's that switch that goes bad.
That's a good point.
The lighting for those instrument clusters is separate from the LCD. So when you put power to the LCD, the more power, the dimmer it gets, and then it works kind of opposite. The more power, the brighter the LEDs get.
Good point.
So, the backlight in there. So it's possible that there's something going on with the dimming circuit, which would mean if you turned all the headlights completely off, the auto lights and everything, if they come on, it's in that dimming circuit.
And if you know how much you drive, I'm just trying to figure out if he would even need to replace it. That's what I'm hoping for. Like you can just ignore that part and.
Oh, you can feel if it's in drive or reverse. You know where that, neutral and then one gear. Okay, we're in drive. And as far as miles go, if you don't care what the miles are, you can kind of figure that up.
Change the oil every so often.
So often.
Keep track of that though, because that so often goes quick.
Really? It's been 3 years?
Jonathan, thanks very much for the call. 866-594-4150. Back to Colorado. Let's talk to Chris. You're on the Under the Hood show. Chris, what can we do for you?
Good morning. Well, a couple things. I have a 22-year-old Ford Escort. And the Escort I got to get it replaced for the daughter. And I'm not sure. I'm not car techie, but I'm pretty sure I'm listening to that cluster problem that this one has. This one has got some electrical issues. I can't get the headlights, even though I've used the kit, to be brighter. And then she said that the what do you call it? When you go to put the charger into the cigarette thing, it's not working. And yesterday we had a snowstorm a couple days ago, and turned on the defrost, and it wasn't working. So this car is on its way out. It's been a reliable car for whatever we've needed, but we need to get advice. And I'm a single mom, so it's, a lot of us out there don't know about what's the best car because we can't necessarily buy a very expensive car for our kids. So we're trying to find something that you would recommend. You don't want to go lithium or Prius or anything like that because of the instability of not having even an electrical plug. And the state of Colorado is just, forget it, you're going to try to charge it someplace. So we're just like, okay, we need to find out where exactly or what exactly you gentlemen would proffer as what would be a good car for a 22-year-old. She wants a stick shift. She does, a regular power automatic instead of a stick shift. And I just need your help.
Oh boy, there are so many things out there. To find a car that's fairly reliable with a manual transmission, you're going to have to go to something a little older because they've stopped making manual transmissions in most everything. But Honda Civics were very reliable. You go back a few years when they still made a stick shift in one, they're going to be a little more affordable because they're a little older. But they're still really reliable. They've got a timing chain instead of a timing belt, so you don't have to worry about the maintenance of that. Overall, they're very low maintenance. You basically just drive them, and they have really good headlights. So if I was looking for a car, and I say this, I've got a couple nephews who have the Honda Civics, and they are like 2014, 2015 models, and I've driven them. They've got great lighting, and they were fairly affordable. I remember their parents both called me and asked me about the cars when they were getting them because, it's like, we're not car people. What do we do here for a car? Is it a good car or not? So that's one place to look, Otherwise, you can ask if you got a local mechanic you use now and then for some car repairs. You can ask them the same question. They could probably go into a little more detail on.
The easy answer is the Corolla and the Civic, right? I mean, that's the
Corolla you're not going to find with a manual trans.
Yeah, you get back a little bit older for that.
Yeah, but if you want to look at, at an automatic trans, if you can get over that and say, let's go with automatic, then definitely a Honda Accord, a Honda Civic, Toyota Corolla.
A well-maintained, high-mileage car you don't have to be scared of as often.
Right.
For a price point that works.
Chris, thanks very much for the call. Hope that helps you out a little bit. That'll do it for this hour of the Under the Hood Show. Hour 2 is coming up. Thanks for listening. The Under the Hood Show is brought to you by Sturdivant's.
You're listening to the Nordstrom's Under the Hood Show with the Motor Medics, Shannon Nordstrom and Russ the Super Tech Evans. Shannon is an ASE engine and parts specialist, and Russ is an ASE Master Certified Technician with extensive factory drivability training. Join the Motor Medics for fun and free automotive advice with real-world solutions to everyday automotive problems. The Under the Hood Show is heard weekly on this and other great radio stations across the U.S. Find out how you can participate in the show by visiting underthehoodshow.com.
With Russ Evans, this is Shannon Nordstrom, thanking you for tuning in to the Nordstrom's Under the Hood Show. Have a great day, and remember, PTLA.
The opinions heard on this program, based on the many years of experience of Russ and Shannon, are offered for entertainment value only and as a guide to your repair needs. No claim to repair or cause is given or implied. Always consult with your own certified technician and follow all safety procedures before attempting any repair. To be a part of the show, call 866-594-4150. Under the Hood is produced by Prairie House Productions. All content is the property of Nordstrom's Automotive Incorporated and may not be used without our permission. Copyright Nordstrom's Automotive, Inc. Now, let's go under the hood with the Nordstrom's Motor Medics.
Welcome to the Under the Hood Show. We are glad to have you with us. Russ Evans is here to answer your automotive questions.
Thanks for joining us under the hood.
Shannon Nordstrom is here to do the same.
Welcome, hoodies. Thanks for tuning in so we can help you tune up.
I'm Chris Carter, here to answer your calls at 866-594-4150. 866-594-4150. Jason's been waiting while the music played there, so let's get right to Jason in California. Jason, you're on the Under the Hood Show. What can we do for you?
Hi, thank you for taking my call. Appreciate it.
You bet.
I was wondering if you could tell me everything about trying to track down a misfire.
In the Corolla?
We're going to need more information.
Yeah, sorry. In the Corolla, yeah. I got a misfire that I'm trying to track down, and I usually, the car drives fine, it starts up fine, it's a little bit slow off the line, for my stop sign or stoplight, but it drives good, it doesn't feel like it's, misfiring at idle or anything. It picks up in speed pretty good after I get going, but usually between 0 and 20, it's a little, it's really kind of almost hesitates to want to take off in a sense.
Okay.
But it drives great, so I'm trying to figure out if it's misfiring, if it's
all right. I think we can help. Gonna have to pinpoint it a little more on his end too, right? I mean, that's the issue here.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if it's got an ignition misfire. Because on a Corolla, the most common misfire you're going to have is an ignition misfire on those cars, which comes from coils and the coil boots. But if you pull out ignition coils, a lot of times we find there's oil intrusion into the holes through that valve cover because the valve cover gasket is leaked on the inside through the tube seals, and they get oil damage into the coils, and it causes the misfire. So you've got to start with that. You pull them out one at a time and look at each one of them. Don't pull out all four. Don't pull out just one, but pull them all out one at a time and look at them. If there's oil in there, you got to put a valve cover gasket in it and a new coil. Start with that, and a new spark plug, because it's going to seep into the bottom of the ceramic on the plug as well and foul it out. That's where we start. And on a car of of that age, it's 10 years old. Coils are kind of right on the edge of replacement time. They do tend to last a long time on Toyotas, but still, I would be thinking about replacing those coils. Rarely get an injector that's bad on one of these cars or anything that's dirty or stuck in that way. Unless you've got a major internal engine problem, which we don't want, like a valve or something that's burnt, I'm still just lean towards those coils for almost everything related to misfires on those.
Well, he said, tell us everything. which is a little hard.
Uh-huh.
But that's where most
Yeah,
people are going to have
especially-
to start.
yeah.
And it didn't sound like he had any lights or flashing lights or anything. It just
Right.
didn't feel right.
Yeah, you go to take off, and when you get a heavier load, it would misfire and stumble and not want to go.
Jason, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. Yeah, start with the coils, and then from there, it's going to be a whole different thing, right?
Yeah, for sure.
866-594-4150. Let's go to Kansas and talk to Joe. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Joe, what can we do for you?
Well, I got a 15 Impala, a V6, and when you turn to the left to take off, it kind of grabs, jerks. I didn't know what they said. It could be the traction control, but they do it. I didn't know if they did or not.
It can be. So what happens is that when you turn the wheels off a center, the wires that are a twisted pair of wires that runs from the body down past the strut to your wheel bearings, they may have a break in one of them. And straight, you're fine, but as you turn and the wire twists a little more, it can open up the circuit just barely. It's partially open where it's still kind of bouncing on itself and arcing as the wheel moves up and down as you're cornering, and it can cause the traction control to activate because it thinks one wheel is turning faster than the other. It knows by the steering angle sensor which direction you're turning, and now it assumes with its computer algorithm, if I'm turning left, the driver's side wheel will be turning at a percentage slower than the passenger side wheel. If it sees that that wheel is turning the same speed as the passenger side, or the passenger side is turning slower than the inboard wheel, it's going to activate traction control.
Okay.
And that can happen with a bad wire. The other thing that can cause it is the wheel bearings on these things now have changed. They used to rust, and we had, if you listen to our show for a number of years, you'd hear us talking about rust on these sensors. Well, now it's got a ceramic magnet on the back of the hub. You buy a hub, and for years people they'd call us and at our Nordstrom's parts counter and order a hub. And we'd say with or without ABS. Well, that was the fault of the company making the computer system, because by that time, they were the same. All cars used the same hub. There was no wire. So we'd send this part. Sometimes we'd ship it to a person. They'd get it and say, well, this is wrong. There's no sensor on it. Because what they did is they read their scanner, saw the sensor was bad, and ordered one. They didn't actually go take the part off and look at it and realize there was no wire on their sensors. So they'd get it, they'd return it. They'd get another one, they'd return it, and then they would get one, take theirs off, and go, oh, there's no wire. And they put it on and say, well, what did you do? It just had a bad sensor. Where was the sensor? It was built on. So
you never hear the rest of the story in some of those situations.
Those magnets, though, are very susceptible just with age to crack and fall off. Not real easy to see. You would have to pull a sensor out of the wheel and shine a flashlight in the hole and turn it slowly and look at the whole surface of it to see if any of it is broken. Now, some of them in the back you can see because they're open and you can turn it and just look and see, and they made it that way so that they can't rust or corrode. Great system, but they do require some maintenance. So I'm suspecting that you may have a broken piece of magnet on one of those. The other thing would be you've got a broken wire going down there, and either one of those is really easy to fix. It's either a hub or the
That's
wire.
after confirming that it's the traction control
Right.
kicking in, right? It could be, what, is there other things it could be?
There could be lots of things, but that's
Yeah.
the most common. And if you scan it, you should get an erratic speed signal code from one of the wheels. That's really common. It'll say front left erratic vehicle speed.
Oh, okay. So Chevrolet dealer can check that out.
Chevrolet dealer, independent garages, that is a common readable system by lots of tools.
There you go. Does that help you out there, Joe?
Yeah. Well, I had it in, put a new hub on about 20,000 miles ago, and so I took it back in, and they said the other wheel bearings was all right. The other side, the left side. So
it would have been then. But I have had them where I've put them on, and 6 weeks later, the other side fails. The piece falls off of it. Is at a certain age, they start to break, which is close to 10 years old. And you'll eventually have all four. I had a friend of mine came in with his Traverse, and I did the left front, and then it came back, and I had the right front and the left rear out that same day. I replaced those, and I said, the other one's coming next. He says, I don't want to spend the money yet. And he was back in about a month later. And, hey, it's doing it again.
Joe, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. 866-594-4150. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we want to hear from you on the End of the Hood Show.
Car feeling ill? Don't want to spread it to your wallet? Call the Motor Medics now for free advice.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the End of the Hood Show. Let's talk to Steve. You're on the End of the Hood Show. Steve, what can we do for you?
Morning. Yeah, first off, appreciate the show.
Thank you.
The issue I'm having is my son has got an 07 GMC 1500 with a 5.3 in it. And the thing was having what we was hoping was just an oil pressure sensor issue, but when they got it in the shop found we're finding like metal flakes and shavings in it. So I'm guessing and assuming that we're probably headed for replacing the engine in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just kind of curious, Russ, when you get like a lot of these engines have like engine oil coolers in the radiators and stuff like that.
Yep.
Do you replace the radiators, or can you just flush them and get the filings out of them? How do you guys handle that in your shop, Russ?
We replace every cooler on an engine if we're replacing an engine and there's been any failure that results in any kind of metal contamination in that oil, the cooler always gets replaced, 100%. Whether it's a radiator, a standalone cooler, or a bolt-on one that bolts on the side of the engine that uses, the heater hose runs through it, it always gets a cooler on it, no matter what. Because we just know from experience that if you don't replace it, you can try to flush it, but they always have a little tiny bit of metal in there that will come out. If you pull that cooler off and you spray brake cleaner in it back and forth and then rinse it out, you get a few little flakes. You blow it out with air, you think you got it good and dry, you rinse it out again, you blow it out, you get a few little flakes. There's always a couple flakes here and there, and all it takes is a few flakes to come out of there and get into a bearing, and then more wear to occur, and then you damage the engine. And an engine remanufacturer can tell if that engine failed due to their problem or due to somebody else's problem. If they take it apart and they see that there's trash starting at the front of the oil feed of the engine towards the back, decreasing as it gets there, they say, the trash didn't come from internally in the engine. It was introduced into the oil system and made its way heavily until it filtered down to the back of the engine and up to the cam. And they say, that's your engine. You killed it, unless it's got a no-fault warranty, which some people buy. So for us, it's just cheaper to do it. The best way to do an engine, we found, is do the whole thing. When we do them at our shop, we've literally done thousands, like over 10,000 engines at that shop. And that's a lot. We have a lot of people that are consumers looking for engines because they want to get rid of their car because they found it's just too expensive to fix. So they say, let me scrap the car. And they say, well, wait a second. How about, check with us and see on an engine? So we get these in our shop. We look at them. When we do an engine, it's typically, if you come in, let's say we need a reman engine, you're going to get fluids, filters, seals, gaskets, spark plugs, the tune-up items like your coil boots, thermostat, water pump, oil cooler if needed. And then once we install it, we check external things, like we check the radiator if it wasn't replaced for proper temperature drop, inlet to outlet, to make sure it's not going to fry that new engine. We look and make sure there's 0 codes in that engine. We got to drive it, make sure all the monitors are running, there's no codes at all in there. We look for leaks, make sure they're addressed, turn it out, then we're good. We find that I'd say more than 98% of all engines that fail because of something external. And whether that's the driver of the vehicle, they overloaded it, they drove it too hard, they put the wrong fuel in it, over a long period, low octane and damaged the pistons from detonation. They didn't change the oil, so the oil system was the failure. Those are all external. Engines themselves are very resilient, and if they're taken care of, they can last a very long time. They're very tough these days. So that's kind of the procedure we follow when we do every engine we have, and we've repeated it so many times now, like I said, doing thousands of them, that we've finally got into this good, pattern of we know what'll make these engines last.
Does that help you out there, Steve?
Yeah, one more quick question. This rig has just about 200,000 miles on it. When you do rigs like that in your shop, Russ, do you typically replace the transmission input seal while you're in there, or if they're not leaking, you leave them alone? What's your thoughts there?
If we have an engine that still turns over so we can unbolt the flywheel and torque converter properly and remove the engine without disturbing it, and it looks nice, a lot of those have already had transmissions replaced. We don't change them, and we typically never have a leak. But if we have to pull the torque converter out with the engine because the engine's locked up, or there was some kind of issue, or it's already showing any signs of seepage or anything, they always get replaced. And overall, we've had good luck with that. And that's cars that are built in the last 20 years. Before that, we had to replace every single one because at about 50,000 miles, an old 350 Chevy
they were leaking.
In an 80s or early 90s truck would just start to leak, and we had a couple of them. We ended up pulling the motor back out or trans to put a seal in it just because we wanted to take care of the customer. And now we look at those things as we're doing it just to make sure we don't cost ourselves extra money and time.
Steve, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. 866-594-4150. Let's go to Oklahoma and talk to Bryant. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Bryant, what can we do for you?
Hey, good morning. Yes, I have a 2010 Hyundai Santa Fe. It's got about 129,000 miles on it. And what it does is if you're driving it, say, about 40 miles, you're doing 70 miles an hour, and you go up a hill, it'll bang. Like it downshifts and it bangs really hard. Round town, 50, 60 miles an hour around town, no problem with it. It's when you hit that 70 mile an hour speed limit and then you go uphill, it makes a large bang. I've had the engine mounts checked. They're good. I took it to a transmission shop. They ran the codes. They tried to make it do it. They couldn't do it. They say it is not a transmission problem. Someone told me it might be the throttle positioning switch.
Does it feel like it's supposed to be downshifting at that speed? Would you think that it shouldn't downshift while you're going that speed, or do you think, it's got a load, it should downshift now?
I think it has a load and it downshifts.
Okay, so if that's acting normally, then a bang, if it's a physical thump, like something hitting something, I'm going to be looking for something like an exhaust shield or the exhaust pipe too close to that. Look at the rear drive shaft. Look really close.
Okay.
Because it's all-wheel drive, isn't it?
It's a front wheel. It's a two-wheel drive front wheel.
Okay, then you can rule that out. So that's one less thing. So you can look at exhaust shields to see if the shields are loose or hitting something. On the all-wheel drives, it's real common for them to bang on that rear drive shaft. That's why I said take a look at that. But look up front, too, and make sure you don't have a shield that's really close, because when you downshift at that speed, things can move around more than they would at different speeds because you've got different loads. The engine's at a higher RPM, but you have less of a load on the drivetrain because you're already traveling and you've got that mass moving. So things are looser, but things are revved up at a higher RPM. So you could get a bang you wouldn't normally around town at a lower speed at 30, 40 miles an hour. I would look at those really close, but there's nothing we've seen that's really prevalent to a Hyundai compared to other vehicles.
Brian said he goes through town. He was around town at 50, 60 miles an hour. He might just be hitting stuff.
Signs.
Yeah.
Wagons.
Rabbits. Yeah. Is there
it's really strange. You have to be going uphill.
Mm-hmm.
And it downshifts. And that's when it just, it's a solid bang. And then it's fine.
Motor mounts are good. And you're part of a country where rust shouldn't be a problem. You know, in our part of the country, we get rust issues where cradles will actually start losing structural integrity and flex because they're getting weak. Maybe the transmission shop would have noticed if it would have been a pressure issue, if it would have been overpressurizing the system and making a hard shift between gears. The tranny shop should have noticed that on their analysis, and they said that all was well.
They ran the codes, and they said they could not find anything.
And were they able to duplicate the problem?
No, they drove it, and they said, well, of course, where they were, they didn't have any hills to go up. But it takes about an hour, going into Oklahoma City from where I live, and there's some hills. And after it gets warmed up, one guy told me that it's the torque converter in a zero throttle positioning switch problem. And I haven't checked into that.
Well, torque converter will unlock at that speed, but when he's talking about the throttle position switch, that is your throttle position sensor. That controls the range of everything at every speed, though. So I wouldn't think about that. A torque converter could make noise at a higher RPM like that as it unlocks than at the lower speeds.
Not typical though.
But yeah, it would usually do it at all speeds all the time. That's why I kind of shy away from that.
You got to find a friend with a scanner that can hook up to it and duplicate the problem and watch
while you're going
when it happens and see if there's anything out of whack.
Brian, thanks very much for the call. We have to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you. 866-594-4150. You're listening to the Under the Hood Show.
Prepare to learn something. You're going under the hood.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. If you subscribe to our YouTube channel and you join the Hoodie Fan Club at underthehoodshow.com, you could win a hoodie.
Like Danny Walker, congratulations from our friends over at Universal Technical Institute. Universal Technical Institute is uti.edu. Check them out today.
Let's go and talk to Pete. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Pete, what can we do for you?
Hey, fellas, I got a 2012 Jeep Grand Cherokee Limited 5.7 Hemi. Just got it. Getting it for the little woman. And the push button ignition wouldn't work. We messed around with it. And finally just wound up putting the key fob in there, and it seems to work okay like that. And it's always, it wouldn't shut off before. You could get it started, but it wouldn't shut off. Well, then we started using the key fob. It seems to be working just fine. And then, I don't know if you guys' wives are like mine, but, the last thing I want is, hey, I'm broke down.
Yeah, that doesn't always go well.
It generally doesn't, So I'm wondering, is that something is it a computer thing, or is it something I can, should be worried about or get looked at? Or
I want to clarify something, and maybe Russ has already got this figured out, but when you say using the key fob, explain what you're talking about.
Well, we took, the push button deal, pop that little button out, and then just put the key fob right in the ignition switch, and then use that
to turn
that little button that you
push.
Yeah, and it just turns like a regular key, but it's use the actual key fob deal for it.
Yeah, if you take it off.
That out on YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah, if you pull the cap off.
That's their fail safe.
Yeah, so they've had there's been at least a significant number of those ignition switches that have failed in the dash themselves, and the fix for it is to replace the whole unit where that button is and the key fobs. They come as a set. When you buy it, you get the switch behind the dash with the button, and you get 2 key fobs, and that usually takes care of it. I've seen a number of these put in. So if the button's not really working anymore and you're having to do it manually, then I think you're probably going to have to replace that whole thing. But the way you're doing it now, the other part failed with the push button. This may fail too, so you may need to get that fixed now before it all fails.
I see what you're saying.
I would.
That's what I was wondering. And what's the funny thing is, we pop the little button out of there, but I can stick my pinky in there and push that deal all the way down, and it'll start and shut off that way.
Yeah, and that's usually another indication that switch is bad in the dash.
You don't want that. You don't want that's not
Chris,
very,
you would run for a long time.
Yeah, I would have a mold of my pinky done, so I wouldn't.
Yeah,
have
you
to,
would leave that alone for a long time. But
if I were driving it,
based on the situation with his little woman, I think that I think that he's got to get this fixed the right way.
I think so. Pete, thanks for the call. Yeah, if it were me, it would go a long time. But if it were my wife, I would get it fixed, I think. 866-594-4150. Let's talk to Donna in Missouri. Donna, you're on the Under the Hood Show. What can we do for you?
Yes, I just bought a Ford Flex, and the lights go off. And they come back on. If I switch it back off and back on, they come back on, and then they'll stay on for a little while, but I never know when they're going to go off.
Oh, the old headlights going off on the flex trick.
They're flexing.
Yeah, but when I touch it, they come back on. Really easy.
They call it a multi-function switch because it has multiple functions. And the function of that switch sometimes doesn't function the way it's supposed to. And the little contactors inside of there will start to burn on the ends and not make a good connection. So when the lights are on, if you just give it a little touch, they'll come back on again if they go out, or if you flip it from high down to low or wiggle it around, or if the temperature changes, all those things can happen. So the fix we found on most of those is to replace that switch, the entire unit on the end. And the way they test it in a shop is just like you did. They'll turn the lights on, they'll leave them sit there for a while, wait for them to go off, and then they'll just lightly touch the end of it. If they come back on again, they say, "Oh, that's a problem. It's a switch," and then they'll replace it. They just got to verify that that's what's going on, because sometimes you touching the switch clicks the relay that's in the junction box, and that is the problem, not the switch. But the ones we've had to fix were related to the switch itself. We just replace the switch.
Well, that sounds pretty good to me. I don't know anything about cars, and some mechanics see a woman coming, so I wanted to get an idea before I took it in what could be wrong.
And that's exactly what we're here for. We welcome those kind of calls so we can help you not get a surprise when you go in.
Well, and when you look at the industry as a whole, there are so many good people out there that take care of every customer the exact same way. It's a shame the ones over the years and the few currently that do cause that reputation to exist, because it shouldn't matter what you know about your car.
Yeah.
The repairs should be the same. The options they give you should be the same. So it's just we got to continue to help educate people so they know the right questions to ask, so we can break that stereotype and also find out the bad actors and show them out, because that's just wrong.
Donna, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. And we've learned we had that, and if you hit a deer and have the entire front end replaced,
oh dear,
that sometimes will fix the headlight problem too. We found out that in the Avalon,
took care of everything.
No problems. Yeah. 866-594-4150. Let's talk to Travis. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Travis, what can we do for you?
I've got a 2016 Chevy Silverado 1500 that lurches between first and second when I'm accelerating from a stop. Very random. It doesn't do it every time, but when it does, you feel it.
And as far as you are aware, you think everything is normal. You don't see any lights, no, nothing like that, correct?
Correct. Yep.
And
I'm at 100,000 miles. I'm due for a transmission flush, but that's about it.
Which transmission do you have, the 6-speed automatic or the 8-speed automatic?
I believe it's the 8-speed. The Z71 version.
5.3 or 6.2?
5.3.
Jeez, leave the guy alone.
I'm just asking a lot of questions because I don't know the answer. No, no.
You narrow it down, get them talking.
Something's going to come out here that's going to help me, Chris. Well, no, I'm just trying to determine if the problem is, transmission related between, the torque converter and the shifting, or if it's a engine tune issue where it's missing a beat when he steps on the fuel. And with 100,000 miles, it really could be either one of them. And so I do lean towards transmission a little bit, but
we've replaced so many transmissions in these things. I like to look at the condition of the fluid, and if the fluid is in really good shape, there's no sense in spending your money to flush it, because a lot of those are $300 to flush out now, and there's just no reason to waste that money if it looks like the fluid's in good condition. Programming, on the other hand, has to be done whether you replace the transmission with a new one or you're using your old one. So I would suggest to have that checked, and it's going to have some updates, because at the miles, as things wear, they change programming to account for wear in transmission. So you might look into getting that programmed, and if you have a transmission replaced at the same place that reprograms your transmission, they should be able to still do that for free over the next 12 to 24 months, depending on how long that software was purchased for. So because in a lot of cases in our shop, we'll program a transmission and say, here it is, here's the fee for programming. Now, if we find out 6 months later that's not going to work, we got to put a transmission in, we don't have to charge you that fee for programming, because we already did, and it's already been done. It's already been updated, and we can put that in the new transmission. It doesn't cost us any more, so we do it as part of the trans service.
But, we're kind of, we're fast forwarding to a transmission here, but
if it lurches between gears and it's not engine, it's got to be transmission related.
Yeah, but, and if it's not like a little shutter going down the road under a light load, like with cruise control on or something like that, there was that era of transmission that they had some that from the factory, they said, hey, we put fluid in there that didn't coexist well with the assembly lube from the tranny, and then over time, not very much time, they would get a shutter in them, and then they would have to flush them and put in a different fluid, and then sometimes flush them again. I had that happen with my 2018, but that was a different symptom than what you're describing, it seems like to me.
Yeah.
And there, with the symptom you're describing, with someone that is hooking up a drivability scanner to the vehicle, they can watch those things as they drive it. If it's doing it all the time, if it's repeatable, that should be a lot easier to find than it used to be.
Okay.
Does that help you out there, Travis?
Yeah, that did.
Cool. Thanks very much for the call. Good luck. 866-594-4150. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you on the Under the Hood Show.
Make a radio appointment each week to hear the Nordstrom's Under the Hood Show.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. Let's talk to David. You're on the Under the Hood Show. David, what can we do for you?
Hi, guys. I got a 2003, and I got dogs. I got a 2003 S10 Chevy pickup 4x4 4.3. And the hazard lights don't work. And I was wondering, where is the hazard flasher module at in that car? It's kind of hard to find. There's nothing on the net about it.
Trying to think of the era there, if it actually has one or not.
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
And I can't find anything on the net. They're pretty good about other stuff, but there's nothing.
Does the turn signal switch work?
Yep,
turn signal?
Yep.
Turn that on. Turn that on and follow the click. I think that relay is the same on that. I think they're both in the same unit. If they're not in the same unit, they're next to each other. So what we do is we turn it on, we follow the click, because the newer ones, the noise comes out of the speaker because it's part of the body control module. If the click sound is coming out of the driver's side speaker, then you have a problem because it's part of the body control module, and that's where your hazard flasher's at. But if there's no sound coming from the speaker, it's actually a relay clicking behind the dash. Find that relay.
Okay.
But yeah, they've just gone to sound. They actually, in the Monte Carlo, they are in the body control module. They went away from the switch on the
My
on
first
the
instinct
dash.
was the S10 was still the old design. They hadn't updated that to the newer stuff. Yeah.
It still has the old clicker in it.
There you go, David. Thanks very much for the call. That's what you want. You want the noise to be the noise, right?
Yeah, you want a real
go-
click.
Yeah.
Like the UPS truck, click, click, click. Good old relay.
You hear those on phone calls sometimes when people call the show sometimes.
Yeah. Let's talk to Kadir. You're on the Under the Hood show. Kadir, what can we do for you?
How you guys doing?
Good.
Listen, I got the Dodge Ram 350. I have one for 15 years, never have a mechanical problem. So I decided to have a four-door. I bought one. I driving it back from Minneapolis with a 3-car trailer behind it. It just keep cutting up every 30, 50 miles, from 75 mile going down to 20 mile and coming back and forth. So I make it back to Sioux Falls, took it to Bullion. They told me the module box and all the fuse boxes needed $2,700. They changed it. After a week, pick up the truck is the same thing. I am driving, look like I ran out of gas. Suddenly, the car is dying all the way down to 20 mile and pick up. Friend of mine advised me, took it to Dakota Diesel. They say 2 injector is no good. So I say, go ahead, change all 6 of them, $3,500. And they did everything. The promise, every problem is going to be solved. I driving it, still is doing same thing, guys. I driving in the freeway 70 miles, 65 miles, suddenly going down to 20. I got diesel or electric problem. Until now, nobody find out what's going on with the truck. When I started it, runs smooth, engine is very quiet, everything is properly work, only in a freeway doing this.
I kind of wonder if it is a fuel problem and it's somehow starving for fuel when it needs more fuel at those heavier loads at the higher speeds where you're pulling a trailer with it, driving or whatever, and it's needing more fuel. Something is causing that to stop, and it's not a real easy thing to find. So we have had this on Duramax trucks that had fuel line issues where the fuel lines would collapse when they would get hot, and it would not allow it to get enough fuel to the engine. It would slow way down to 10, 20 miles an hour, and then all of a sudden it would pick back up because it didn't need that fuel again, and it would run for a little bit and drop back down. And if you parked on the side of the road and idled for 10 minutes, then you could take off and go. But it was worse in the heat. And some of those we ended up putting, in the suction line going to the engine, we'd put a clear hose in and look at it and see if we could see that the fuel was disappearing, or put a pressure gauge on it we could read from the cab. That's what you really need to do, is put a pressure gauge on there that you can read to see if it's going into a vacuum, because if it's going into a vacuum state on that suction line, it means that it's not allowing fuel to flow from the tank. They make systems you can put on these trucks. One's called an air dog that supplies a good feed of fuel from the tank to the injection pump at all the times to protect it. And it shouldn't need that if it's operating properly, unless it's got a very big performance engine, and then you need them. But a lot of people put them on to fix the problems they had with the CP3 pumps and things in the Duramax diesels. And the Ram trucks got them too. Some people did it. But this one here, that 15 Ram is new enough that the fuel system is designed plenty well, as long as it's working. But we've seen some strange stuff when working on vehicles like this. We found one with a rag in the tank, and every once in a while the rag would float around, and it would suck up onto the fuel strainer, and then it would die, and then it would fall off after when the truck sat for a while, and it'd be fine, and it'd float around the tank, and then it would suck up there again.
That is the definition of a strange one.
Yeah, that would be.
Yeah.
That would be
and we've seen that more than once where the rag was in the tank. That's one possibility.
But Dakota Diesel, they say they cleaned the whole tank for me. They put the new filter on it.
That's
then
good.
They would know. Yeah, they would know that. Then that fuel system is working.
And the companies you mentioned, they've got a good history of understanding these diesels. And, if the dealership has their good diesel tech work on it, they're usually quite skilled people. The specialized diesel shops, they see a lot of this stuff, and they typically know what they need to do. This is a bit unusual that it could be that mysterious. Are you getting a depower light or check engine light or anything when this happens?
No, that's my problem. The car, when I drive in it before doing that, is so smooth. In this cold weather, I turn the key on, starting it, fire up right away. You're not hearing the engine. Usually diesel, you hear it everywhere. But when I start driving in the freeway, about 5, 6, 10 miles, it just looks like I am running out of gas again, or all the power is cut off. And going down, and I push the gas a couple more times and pick up again for another 20, 30 miles. Matter of fact, I'm not using it right now because I cannot count.
You can't trust it. When you took it to the repair shop, were they able to duplicate the problem, or did they have the trailer loaded, or where they could duplicate the problem or not?
No, they just drove it, and they say the builder told me this is the problem with the fuse box and module and stuff. So $2,800, go ahead and do it. Matter of fact, I spent about $7,000
it sounds horrible
already in these two
places. It sounds terrible. I would, one thing that you might consider, and Russ I've heard him have customers where we've had a little bit of a challenge before, and said, you know what, here's what we're gonna have to do. You're gonna have to pay us a couple hours, bring the thing in hooked up and loaded, and we need to go out and pay us to drive it and duplicate it with our scanner and stuff hooked to it, so that we can see actually what is missing when this thing dies. And that could be, the fact that you've already spent so much, I feel so bad for you.
Mm-hmm.
But that might be the commitment it's going to take to figure it out for sure.
Right. Thanks very much for the call. Good luck. Yeah, that is not a fun issue to have to deal with.
And the best thing to do is go back to the place that actually did the work, because you've spent thousands of dollars with them.
Right.
You got to pick and choose how you do. You don't want them to just charge you more and not do anything, but you also...
You're in a position to ask some good questions.
And they're going to want to get it handled too.
I would sure think so.
Let's go to Virginia and talk to Gene. You're on the Under the Hood show. Gene, what can we do for you?
Yeah, my friend has a 94 Ford F-150 pickup. And about a month ago, periodically every 2 or 3 days or so, driving along and the thing would just shut off. So his brother said, hey, let's take the hose off to the to the fuel, just got throttle body, and he sprayed some starting fluid in there. Things started up and it ran. And so that's what my friend has been doing anytime that the thing the engine has quit. I've listened to it. I've never been around it when the thing has not run, but I told him how to listen for the fuel pump, the motor. But here the last 2 weeks, he hasn't had any problem. Is there something else that would periodically, it just acts like the fuel is shut off?
No, not, the only thing I can think of on these that will cause fuel to just quit, but the fuel pump still works most of the time, there is an inertia shutoff switch in the cab that when you hit a hard enough bump or crash it, will cut power to that. And they were famous for having some issues with the contactors in them not working real well, so you could lose your fuel pump. But then when the pump worked, it was working fine. It wasn't like a pump that was going out. It was the actual power to the pump. So if that inertia switch is bad, we had a number of them come in that were just jumped. They had cut the wires and they're jumped across. When we used to buy them, we'd call out here to the yard and say, hey, I need an inertia switch. And they go, well, we checked 6 vehicles and they are all the wires were cut and spliced around them. What does that mean? Well, that means the switch is bad. So it's possible that switch is going bad. It's a 94. It's 30 years old. So it could definitely be losing its contactability.
So what do you do there? Replace it, or do you
most people
get in
jumped
there with
around
some,
them?
Yeah.
You could find another switch for it too. I don't know where you'd get one.
You pull it yard, self-service, go out and grab another one out of another vehicle. They're down in the right-hand kick panel.
That's where you're going to find it. You're not going to get a new one.
Most likely not. And then also check the wires up by the battery to make sure the power wires that feed the battery are not corroded and
the 2 black ground wires, the small ones, they've got to be grounded really well. They're on the core support. If they're loose or corroded, that'll lose your power to your ECM.
And then things will just not work.
Gene, thanks very much for the call. That'll do it for hour 2 of the Under the Hood Show. Thanks for joining us. The Under the Hood Show is brought to you by Sturtevant's. welcome to the after show. You guys ready?
Oh, we're after and we're ready.
You
Let's
ready?
get after it.
Let's get after it. Let's talk to Tony. You're on the Under the Hood show. Tony, what can we do for you?
Hey, I got a 2020 GMC Acadia. We bought it new in 21. It was, whatever. Anyways, on the key fob for the, the starter and stuff, it tells me the battery is dead or low anyway, needs to be replaced. So I got the other key fob, which we don't use, and the car says the same thing. It recognizes the second key fob, but it says that battery is low too. Are them on just on a timer thing? Is something I have to reset in the dash, or do I really need to change the battery stuff?
Have you put battery in either one of them?
He's in denial.
Tony,
He's in denial.
Tony, hold on. Let me handle this one. Tony, change the battery.
Yeah. Change the batteries.
Well, hold on a second.
Okay.
Need any more?
You got to do it like once a year.
But both of them?
No, not
Both
once
of
a
them do it at the same time?
Well, yeah, because they're just aged, their batteries, and they're constantly sending out a signal. They're sending out a signal, transmitting, looking for the car, and the car is looking for them. And if you leave them too close to the car, they're always in contact. If you've got that, if it's in your house and you park your car in your house and they're within, let's say,
in the garage,
15 feet of each other, like some people put their key on the wall there on the shelf.
And that's too, I think, it would be weird if you had replaced batteries over time and they both went out at the same time. But the fact that you've had one that...
Both of mine right now say key fob needs to be replaced in my Yukon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're less than 2 years old.
Okay, all right.
My daughter...
I didn't want to waste the time and money doing it.
No, they're not that expensive. Just put the batteries in and see if it goes
I bought
away.
them. I didn't put them in. Mine were $4 a piece.
Yeah, you can...
They're just still sitting on the shelf next to the remote.
You can buy a 4-pack.
I'll say that now, too. That is a completely different game now than the very first key fob I ever had. Getting batteries for it was not easy.
No.
It was not cheap.
Now they're either 2032s or 2025s.
And they're at...
I just bought some recently.
Those 2032s just went up because I had to get them for my alarm at home. And, they give you those cheap Chinese factory batteries that last about a day. So I had to buy all the new ones. And I'm like, how much can they be? And they were $18 for a 4-pack. I went, what happened here? They just shot up recently.
I was just going to tell Tony, 2019 Sentra, my daughter's car, she had a problem where she was getting the warning light that said battery low. So I had went ahead and I had put a key fob in her car and the light went away. Well, she was at her friend's house and she used her remote start and she locked the car with the keys in it, laying inside of it. So she was in a bad cell signal area where her friend lives and they couldn't use the drone start to open the car.
Sure.
And her keys are inside the car. So I said, okay, Ava, I'll run out there with the other set of keys. Well, I grabbed the other set of keys that we had. I get out there, dead key fob.
Uh-huh.
And my brain wasn't working at the time. I'm like, oh, geez, I'm going to drive home and get and then I'm like, no, safety key. Pull out the switchblade key on it and went into the door and open it. But that is, that batteries, even though the one had been in the drawer and the one had been in the car, they went dead about the same time.
Right.
That was my point.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Well, I didn't even think of that when you guys, at least I gave you guys a good laugh.
Sure.
But anyway,
Yeah, no, it was good. It was
thanks
good.
for that.
Thanks for the call,
Oh,
Tony.
boy.
If that doesn't work, then we're going to have to eat some crow.
Mhm.
But, I'm pretty sure he needs
Right.
batteries.
Right.
Well, Chris, did you see what's happened now with electric cars?
Exactly what I said would happen.
Exactly. You're right. So I don't know if you saw it, Shannon, but electric cars are out.
Wow.
Oh, then we're going to go that
They're-
extreme?
My, he's going right to it.
Yeah, they're to the point where.
Which article did you read? I've
Well,
read a couple.
It's coming out now. They haven't. It's not like they've stopped it right now. But here's where we're at. We got workers who were on strike, who were just frankly pissed because they're like, these electric cars are causing us issues. That's part of the striking terms on all three manufacturers. One, that hits us. So the manufacturers go, something to think about. Let's keep our antennas going here. Now, over 4,000 dealers in the United States have gone to the administration and said, you cannot force a certain number of cars to be electric by a certain date. You can't do it. The consumers are not ready for it. And then 3, you've got Elon Musk, who is not self-proclaimed. He is the king of electric manufacturing. I mean, he knows it. He's got his arms around it. And he says, hey, you guys aren't ready for this. The world is not ready to switch 100% over to this or as quick as you are. He says, we love electric cars. We want to keep making them. But no, they're not ready. I don't think you should do that. We need to, what was his quote? Drill, baby, drill. He's like, it's not ready. So the scale has tipped.
Yeah, the tide is turning a little bit.
Something is going to happen.
But Chris made a good point a long time ago. He said when they put the deadlines out there, they probably never plan on hitting them.
They'll move them.
But they're also they're going to say, look how much further along we are now.
Right.
Because we did that. Well, they caused a lot of problems for sure.
Sure. And we've done this for, there was just recently in one of the magazines.
I read the same article about all the dealers protesting basically Washington, saying, we got inventory building up the wazoo.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to buy it. The incentives don't seem to matter.
Right.
And there's consumers complaining. We had a lady call the show today who said, well, we don't want an electric one because, here in Colorado, we can't, where are you going to charge in this?
She was misinformed, though, because she included a Prius in her conversation.
Yeah, Prius is a hybrid.
She was using talking points without really knowing.
She was totally afraid of, because she even said.
Shows the public is not ready because they don't know.
Yeah.
They weren't ready for ethanol because they didn't know. Yeah. And now they're like, what?
Which, by the way, this is how it works. I mean, and I said this but many years ago, I said, it'll be fine. We won't do it. Because when we were talking about we were going to be all electric by this date, I said, no, we won't. And there'll be growing pains and there'll be issues.
I was just down at the city yesterday. And we were having a discussion with the head electrical guy.
I bet you were.
A good one. Those guys, man, I tell you what, they have been so helpful, and they know that if I don't know what I'm doing, I can figure it out pretty quick and pass it, and it'll be better than it should be. You can go from, shouldn't do that to the. The funniest thing I heard was we were talking about electrical. They said, the funniest thing we saw recently, Russ, a guy. So we went to a house and he had a unique use for his jumper cables for his car because we were talking about electric cars. And what happened? He goes, well, we came to the house and the meter wasn't installed on the house and they had a pair of jumper cables jumping the meter lugs so they didn't have to pay for electricity. They're like, that's illegal and not safe at all. I was like, oh my. But we were talking
illegal
about.
in all states.
I asked if our.
Stealing electricity is not.
City has started requiring an electric car charging outlet, at least one in new garages, because a lot of cities they're requiring that you have it or pre-wired with a tube and a blank box so that all the way back from your basement box or wherever, so that in the future it can be pulled and run, even if it's not run. You got to have the conduit. And they said no. And then they asked me, what do you think about charging electric vehicles inside? Because many of these new apartment buildings going up with basement parking, guess what they have? They have electric car chargers in the basement. The airport has electric car charging stations on the lower levels of the parking ramp, not on the top level. And they all have the same thing too. Sheetrock with a very low burn rating. It's good if a gas-powered car catches on fire in the garage, but you set a lithium-ion battery on fire in a garage, it will burn through a firewall in a house in less than 30 seconds and destroy the entire house.
That's what they said at that safety seminar we had out here. Just get that thing, if you can, drug out of there.
Well, the tow companies bring them in and they put them in a oxygen-sealed steel container, and they have to keep them in there for a number of days.
Well, they've said
if
now
they're compromised.
They've said just barricade them so that if it does burn, it's not hurting.
Yeah, they got to be isolated.
Barricades between them.
They put them inside these containers. So, like, if you're in a yard and you don't have room to isolate the car, they have to be in there. Now, some yards have put up those concrete dividers that you see on highways. They'll stack them.
That's the pretty accepted practice.
Yeah, they got to have vent out the top. But if you're in an enclosed area or something, they have to put them inside like a shipping container so they burn. Well, they're putting these things in apartments, and we know that occasionally they catch on fire. Well, if you have an apartment complex, and some of these apartments now have 500 cars on 2 or 3 levels in the basement. Well, if you got 500 cars in there and you're rotating people that are at those apartments, let's say over a 10-year period, it's maybe 5,000 cars that come in and go out of there. Eventually, there might be one electric car that has a problem, and all it takes is one. So they're still trying to sort that one out, but they're not requiring those electric. They haven't got to that point because it's at the thing where they say they're not ready for it. People are not ready for the electric cars, so they're not requiring them to be.
I think it would be wise to. Wouldn't it be wise to have a requirement to run a tube out to your garage, to your main mechanical room anyway? I mean, just to have that available for whatever might come up.
I think if I was putting the electrical code in, because they'll update it again here next year as well, but I think it would be good to have any garage for any reason to have an electric conduit run out to it, or any accessory building you have should have at least a conduit connected, even if it's empty.
We do it all the time now by choice.
Yep. Sure. So I know in buildings,
I've learned the hard way.
In big buildings, they do it, but in small buildings, residents, it would be great, because I have run no less than 4 sub panels over the years, and some of them have been removed and replaced with other stuff where I've had to rip walls out and pull pipes and move stuff because I don't want to just bolt it to the outside of the house. It would have been a lot easier. And in new houses, I see the same thing. They close them up, and then you're like, okay, how am I going to run this in the future? It sure would be easier to have it, but there's a lot of cost involved.
I remember when we built our house in 05, I remember it was Ron Saber said to me, because I was talking to him about home entertainment, good friend of both of ours. He goes, make sure you run a couple tubes to the attic. He goes, we'll figure the rest out. And I'm so glad we did.
We've got them right here in the studio. We've got a couple tubes over here, and I've put some extra stuff in as I've gone because it's.
Yep, I'm glad we did that.
Yeah, we don't want the problem down the road, but that's with those tubes too. That's the most failed area for inspections for electrical.
Mm-hmm.
People don't put fire stop around those tubes when they run them through. They don't spray the spray foam, the red spray foam in there, and then they draft and leak through. And here in this studio, if I get in the attic and I put my hand over that tube when it's open, air is just blowing through there like a blowtorch would. They're stuffed. These tubes are stuffed with insulation to stop that. With the caulk, the dum. But yeah, when they were wide open, I was like, "There's air going right through there." How
and
did
that
you
creates
pass?
condensation.
I ran all sorts of audio cable, and now it's the Bluetooth speakers are sitting in front of it all. I've positioned my speakers to block the cables.
I've got one tube that's full of coax from DirecTV. And I told the guy just the other day, he's coming to do something. I go, it's all right if you pull the coax out and cut the ends off and get rid of it.
Yeah.
I have a minimum of 4 cables run to every single room and hallway in my house of Cat 5 cable.
Mm-hmm.
I've never used it. I still don't use it, and I'm sure I never will because it's all connected now. It's much faster wireless than
for sure
wired. The only thing coming through my whole house, for like the cable TV comes in on a fiber line now that comes fiber from the pole into the house. And now I've got 2 of those. It's like all these companies keep adding. It's so easy for them to add now that you're getting more and more choices.
So you guys are starting to see the trend turn in electric cars.
Yeah, I think so. But it'll turn back.
I do have more people asking me, should I buy one?
What I was getting at a minute ago was
know your situation.
There was an article in one of the car magazines in the last year. I can't really narrow it down more than that. I'm sorry. And they were talking about all the innovations and when they were put in place as regulations, like airbags, when they were said you have to have an airbag by this date. Originally, the date that was said, it ended up being 22 years later.
Yeah, they put an airbag in a taxi cab in 1971 or something like that.
And there was other ones.
And then
cab.
Yep. And then 1990 or 1989.
I think it was mechanical bag.
Yeah, 1989-90 was when they started really starting to put them in.
Yeah, it was just and there was other instances of the first regulation said you have to have this by this date, and it ended up being 10 years, 20 years.
Those
down
cycles
the
are
line.
getting closer though, because the manufacturing can get
for sure.
Their manufacturing cycles change so fast.
So you guys, nowadays things come out and any technology is possible. I mean, they can make a car fly probably, and we'd be like, oh, that's cool. What though, if we go back over 20 years, what was the one thing that came out that they made mandatory, or it came out in cars and we just went, wow, how did they do that? Like a feature. Was there one that stood out in your mind that came out that you just said, huh? Now, the third brake light, that's not impressive. It's just a bulb on a brake light switch. But was there a system that came out in cars and then everybody adopted it? Everybody has it now that you just went, wow, I never thought they could do that in a car.
It wasn't just in a car, but Bluetooth.
Bluetooth. Well, it came out in cars basically the same time it came out.
That was just a game changer.
For me, it was when a tire pressure monitor came out. I said, how do they get a tire that's spinning? How do they make, they're sending a signal and there's air and the light comes on and says 15 pounds. Well, that's kind of crazy. I mean, an airbag was just an airbag. It's like, okay, we have a switch here. It closes and blows up a bag. But I was thinking, why do you get this out of thin air? There's a, and
you can't have wires. Locks. The things are turning. That's a great one.
How about remote control locks on a car? The key fob. Anybody now under 40 wouldn't have even thought about that.
I was like, ooh.
But the remote start for my dad when I was a kid was me walking out with a key. You open the door, start the car, and then you lock the door and you bring the key in and you hope you don't lock the keys in the car.
I was just thinking about Bluetooth the other day. That was one where I wish I hadn't early adopted. Lot of frustration with Bluetooth the first first
you had
generation.
That box I had to switch from one car, from the Cutlass to the other one.
It was a nightmare.
With the antenna
just
and
all of
you
it.
Remember that thing?
Just Bluetooth, and you had to have the right Bluetooth. Yeah, you had to have the right Bluetooth receiver.
My newer vehicle, I don't struggle with Bluetooth. It does two phones and an MP3 player all at the same time.
Yeah.
And it tells you which one's doing what, no problem. But the Camaro, that is a finicky son of a... tell you, that thing, one device will work, the other one won't. Sometimes I have to stop, turn the key off, open the door so it shuts off the radio and close it, and then restart it to get my Bluetooth to work. And sometimes even restart my phone, because if I've used my phone in another vehicle, then I try to use it in that one, it won't work. But yet my radio, which is 3 years old in my truck, that's just a aftermarket, it works fine every time. It'll connect to anything Bluetooth.
There's something I said it earlier. I wanted to talk to you guys about. I learned this and I was like, oh, I can't wait to tell these guys. Back in the 70s, now this, you'll be on board with this.
I'm crossing off Chris info the note I wrote early in the show.
Did you really?
And then I forgot to even go back to my note.
Southern Pacific Railroad back in the 70s, the railroads have those wires along the side of the railroad. Back in the 70s, they started working with microwaves and fiber optics, and they were trying to get their messages relayed. They didn't want to put up the wires anymore, those cables along the thing. So they came
Telegraph wires?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
They came up with a system of microwaves and fiber optics, and it was the Southern Pacific Railroad Internal Network Telephony. Southern Pacific, SPRINT. Sprint. And I was like, that's where Sprint comes from.
Did it?
It was from the Southern Pacific Railroad Internal Network Telephony.
So it was an internet for them.
It was what became
intranet.
of
Sprint cellular.
Sprint telephone. Yeah, Sprint cellular. And I sent that to my brothers because they're into the communications business. And my brother Frenchie goes, yeah, I know. He's like, yeah, I know. Microwave Communications Incorporated Radio Relay was MCI. They changed it from Microwave Communications Incorporated to MCI. He goes, yeah, you guys didn't know that? Shut up.
So it was a project of an independent business that drove technology to make it happen. It wasn't the government.
And then I said to my brother, he was being all, yeah, I'm smart. You're dumb. I was like, how'd MCI work out?
And my favorite one, though, to this day is still when I worked for a store that was selling Gold Star TVs and radios.
I love this story.
Yeah.
They were making a killing, and all the college kids would buy them. It's like, these are the greatest things ever, and they're so cheap, and they never break. And then the company owner went, wait a second. They're better than everybody else's. They never break. Change the name to LG, call it Life's Good, and double the price.
Yeah.
It'll still be cheaper than everybody else, but it'll be great stuff. And they made it killing. And it's still one of the big things. Of course, they sell about everything now, but boy, the years have changed as we've gotten, and now we're officially to the point where we're going, I think we are getting older. And I was looking at a thing the other day and realized they are so right. We're in the store trying to buy milk, and we look, and there were literally 20 kinds of milk. There you got whole milk, you got skim milk, you got part skim milk, you got almond milk, you got milk. When I was a kid and you went to the store, your two
you got
choices,
a jug of milk.
Your two choices were milk or no milk. if you want
maybe whole
skim
milk
or put some water in it. I mean,
whole, that was it.
We didn't have much, and we didn't have cable TV. We didn't have health insurance that was 25% of our total income. One person could work and support the whole family, and they had weekends off. We didn't have a cell phone bill that was. Somebody told Patty at Audio Playground told me the other day her cable bill is $330 a month, so she can have all the packages on it and all the grandkids can watch it and everything. I'm like,
she's packaged herself to
that is a lot of money, but
we
that's
were talking
what
about that the other day.
That's what this stuff costs. And then I call.
It's just $40. You do that 7 times.
Talking about how did Mom do it? And my brother goes, our phone bill. She worked at the phone company, so our phone bill was $20.
Yeah,
that was our bill for phone, TV, entertainment. We didn't have.
That's all it was.
Our bills were electric, water, and $20 for the phone. That was it.
That was called utilities.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's nuts what we pay for stuff, and even in our cars. If you have a car and you decide you want to get some, so I looked into the OnStar the other day. If you've got OnStar and you wonder what it costs, just forget it, because I've got OnStar on all my vehicles except for one, and as I'm looking, I'm like, well, let me check and see what it costs to have. Maybe I could use the remote start on my phone or whatever. I'm like, no way. How do these? Because they include it. They include it for a certain period of time when you buy a brand new one, so they can sucker you into paying for it. It's like when they send you the newspaper for free for a month, and then they stop and you go, "Oh, I need the newspaper." They did that to my mom years ago. They sucker you in.
1974.
But OnStar, you're going to be paying a ton of money, and the more stuff you get, if you want navigation and phone and everything, which some people do, you're well over $100 a month. And then if you got a remote start and you got a subscription for that, you're going to pay for that. And then if you want Sirius XM on your radio, you're going to pay for that.
Seems like a great time to introduce Under the Hood Show Plus.
There you go.
You subscribe
for only $300 a month.
Not now, Chris.
Oh, sorry.
Not now.
Oh, whoops.
Bad timing.
No, it's
read the room.
Darn it.
It's just nuts how much you can spend on some of these automotive subscriptions and stuff. And then the people who pay, there's some extended warranties that are amazing. This is the time of year where some people are thinking about getting a new car before they go on vacation. Really think about that, folks, because a new car, it's going to cost you more in insurance plus the payments. But if you're spending more on maintaining this thing than it's worth, then, that's something to consider too. But when you buy an extended warranty, read that fine print. And like Shannon says, when you buy a new car, don't just buy it today because you're excited about it. Give it a weekend and think about it. Maybe even 7 to 10 days. And do I still want it? If you're still desperate for it, great. But in that time, read over those extended warranty papers and reconsider them over and over again. And find out, you can go to YouTube and you can Google YouTube a extended warranty company. See what people said. They'll say, well, we tried 10 and this is what we got. We have a couple that have been really amazing. One is Route 66 Warranty, and they're part of like 3 or 4 companies with the same or different names, but same. They'll tell you who they are. We haven't had a problem with warranty with them. If you buy the right one, and I said we have had problems where somebody buys the wrong one of theirs,
right,
and it wasn't covered, but it's spelled out pretty clear. I've had other companies. A lot of them are out of business now. they come in and literally they come in and say, "Hey, I got an extended warranty. Can you check this over my car?" And I say, "Yeah, I called them and they're out of business." What do you mean? I just bought that 6 months ago. Sorry.
Yeah.
Where'd you get it from? Well, I got it online. Most dealerships are pretty. They check them out pretty well before they get into bed with these companies and use them, because they don't want you to come back to the a nice car dealership and say, "Hey, this warranty company's out of business. Sorry, not our problem." So watch that stuff. We're coming into the holiday season where people are really considering car purchases and stuff for kids, for yourself, whatever. But the extended warranties are not a fix-all for everything. And
I'm reminded of the SNL skit where the lady comes out and the husband has the Lexus in the park in the driveway with the ribbon on it. She's like, "You bought a Lexus? You just got laid off." But it's a celebration. It's for Christmas. We can't afford this.
I haven't seen that skit. I got to look for that one. Yeah, you definitely want to check on that stuff. Russ, I think you got a little excited in your documentary about the cost of OnStar and Cirrus.
They're crazy money. The cheapest package was over $40 a month.
Did you sure you didn't call a dealer, a second-hand dealer of it?
No, I went to OnStar.com.
Because I think my experience is that the plans run between $19 and $39 a month.
The one I looked
to get your Connect plan, or you can go to their safety plan.
That $39 one a month, when you put the taxes and the fees and all that crap on there, it's like another $9, like a cell phone. It's over $40 a month.
Yeah, I have to check my credit card bill.
Yeah, you want to look at that stuff real close.
I do have. This is an admission.
And then Cirrus is like less than $20.
My pet peeve with Sirius XM thing now is you get these cards all the time that say free for 90 days, and then it's $5 a month. Well, they have a great $4.99 a month plan, but the problem is it's a mobile app only plan. And if you've got a car with a button that says XM and you want to push it and use it, forget about it. You're going to have it on your phone.
Yeah, no,
you're going to use your Apple CarPlay to do it, and you can do it. It's
why I only listen to AM and FM radio.
I know. It's just
radio is the future.
It's still here.
And you should just listen to the radio.
For me, the only two things I listen to is radio and Amazon Music. I rarely listen to a podcast.
Radio. Just radio. Just radio.
Radio, because when we're traveling and I've got the radio on, I can hear what news is up. And occasionally while we're driving, we'll hear something local that's happening. Like we've gone to Christmas light things. They're like, there's this amazing Christmas light display in Chattanooga today.
You've never known about it.
We're here. What's going? It must be over there where the lights are blinking. Yeah. There's some really cool stuff that comes up that way, and weather that you don't necessarily get when you're, tuned into XM New York or whatever. Plus, some of those places are just crazy out there. You don't want to hear what's going on there. They've fallen off the edge of the flat Earth, right? No.
All right, have we solved all the problems?
I think so.
For this week, we had 2 weeks to catch up on, so we're good now.
That's true. All right, thanks everybody. Thanks for. Make sure you listen to AM FM radio and also hit subscribe on YouTube.
Well, you do that at home.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Hey, we've got over 100,000 people on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
We've got, like 5 million listening throughout all our radio station networks and our podcast. But YouTube is still...
That might not be.
It's more like 10, isn't it?
Yeah, I think you're low. Go ahead.
Probably. It is up there. That's weekly, though. I know we got a lot. There's a couple hundred stations. There's a ton. But our YouTube is still, it's not quite sucking air. It was, but we're over 5,000 subscribers now.
Let's go.
Which is
get up
pretty good, because when we started
300,
we started the broadcast of the show, and we had, the channel had been up for like 12 years, and we had 300 or 400 people.
We made one because it was cool and never did anything with it.
So in a few years of the show, it's grown. But when we hit that 5,000, a lot of things changed that I noticed in number of views on different things. So they watch it, I think, to see. So if you like us, it's awesome. It helps the channel grow.
Like it, subscribe.
But if you subscribe, it really helps the channel grow. They kind of watch different things, and
By the way,
it's amazing.
I just had this conversation with someone. They're not watching anything. There's no person that is looking at anything you're ever doing online.
It's all robots.
And it's all robots. It's not like,
hey, what's your job? I watch YouTube all day.
Yeah, I watch to see how many people are on that channel. No, nobody's doing that. All right. That it? We good?
That was quite an after show.
That was an after
How'd
show.
we start? Electric cars.
You know what? We wouldn't.
We started the call.
Tony didn't change his batteries. He was
We wouldn't
amazing.
be complete though if we didn't end the show on a sad note. Unfortunately.
Oh yeah, I wrote that down. I thought maybe that should be during the regular
I just
show.
got a comment because Shannon's so bored with my commentary over there that he's making comments on Facebook, and I saw it pop up on my phone.
That was I did it a while ago. Your
It says
comments are behind.
it's got to be the truth. It says Shannon Nordstrom just mentioned you in a comment.
That is how screwed up the system is because I did that last night.
That's why I said that. I just get some a couple days old from my wife. Well, anyways, as
that
we've
happens.
grown
It's
this
weird.
show, it's been a lot of knocking on doors and calling people. And I ended up with I got about half of the stations, and a gentleman came into our car shop to get a window repaired
Johnny Knight.
years ago. Johnny Knight.
Is that right?
Yeah. Johnny Knight from at the time it was
Augustana Radio.
No, it was
Or was
they're over in Minnesota now. The radio they were
KISD.
KISD.
Okay.
It used
But
to stand
he did college radio first,
right,
though.
and he told me KISD, which is now they're going to hate me for saying this and letting it out of the bag, but it's in Minnesota now. It stands for in South Dakota. K in South Dakota. KISD. Did you know that?
Did not know that.
Yeah, I got that. Learned that from him. Anyways, he came in and he goes, I like your radio show a lot, and I could sell stations for you, I think, because I do bank marketing. I'm on the road every day. I bet I could do that. So he spent his time, he says, banks are only open. I can go in there like 9 to 3, and I got this extra time. And so he started going in and he knocking on doors, and he started getting us stations. And we really started growing.
Yeah, him and his lovely wife.
Yeah, Vicky. And we started really growing. So then I was going, I got to get some more stations. And then he's got some more stations. And we went back and forth and did really well. And then he started selling our newspapers for us. We do a newspaper article as well that goes out across the country. And anyways, Vic turned 70 just shortly ago. And then Vic passed away this past Monday. He'd been having some health problems over the last few years. And we saw him go from a person who was basically super healthy 5 years ago at 65 to a person who was hurting.
Changed a bunch.
Yeah, changed a bunch. And we were just talking the other day, and I said, yeah, Vic's having a hard time. Said, I don't know, 5-10 years or so, it's going to be pretty hard the next, and
Now, we had just had that conversation.
and it was like, yeah, Chris was gone. So it was like 6 days later, he's gone. So as these holidays come in, remember, no matter, how you're doing. And I left on a good note with Vic. And of course, Doug talked to him the day before and everything was great other than some health problems, don't forget about anybody. Because if you got family members that you just don't talk to for some reason, friends, or you just haven't seen them in a while, or you see them every day, don't forget to give them a hug because it may be your last. Yeah. So we want to thank Vic for all he did and all the family members
Vic
and everybody
Jaco.
around. The one thing to me, when it comes to my mind, that stands out about Vic over anybody else I'd met was how quickly I knew that he was a Christian when I first met him.
Yep.
Because he walked into my shop and he said, hello, good afternoon. I'm Vic Jaco from Sioux Falls. I'm a Christian. I work in bank marketing, and I need my car repaired. Okay. And I heard him say that many times to other people that I would introduce him to, or we would meet and we were in the same room together. And he would just tell you all about himself in a very short, like a 30-second package.
Yeah, he had his elevator speech down pretty good.
And then he would ask you about you. And
he was such a gentleman.
Oh yeah, very, very interested. Always, every phone call ended up with "It's very good to hear from you," and it ended with a "very good to talk to you. I look forward to talking to you soon," and always words of encouragement. So he made me a better person for having known.
I think he made a lot of people better people.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Good to be around. Thanks, Vic.